Doc family. It's so good to see you all and have you all here. So yes, thank you for digging in and moving all of your seats and getting a little bit of energy in your feet as well. We want you energized. You're going to be hearing from some incredible speakers today. So yes, my name is Shanida Scotland. I am one of the co-directors of Doc Society. For those of you who don't know us, Doc Society is a non-profit that is 19 years old now, and we champion, support and advocate for documentary filmmakers globally. We have team based in Europe, in the Americas, in East Africa and Australia. And as I say, we're dedicated to independent filmmaking all over the world. Our preoccupation with documentary goes beyond filmmaking. It goes toward the rights of artists to self-expression, to the rights of audiences to access documentary film, and to strengthening the very ecosystem that supports independent documentary work. Our team is laser focused on two big questions at the moment. First, what kind of narratives are needed and what kind of ideas are needed in this age of democratic, climate, and economic polycrisis? But also, what do we need to deliver and to imagine a successful, sustainable future for independent documentary film? No matter your priorities, the work that you do, no matter those priorities, the integrity of independently produced documentary film is mission critical for us all. We are witnessing pressures from all sides. Distribution is troubled. Streamers are dictating narratives. Funding cuts seem to be absolutely everywhere that we look. As we heard already today, festivals and festival workers are in funding crisis, and that is just to name but a few. Independent documentary film needs future visioning for a more robust ecosystem and the recognition it deserves to be able to weather these storms. So, what we're doing is we've started creating space for courageous conversations. This is one of them. And today you're going to be participating in this conversation. We will note your contributions today, and hopefully, by the end of the year, having traveled to a number of key documentary film spaces, we together will have created a set of priorities to work on together, and I mean together. So how is this going to work? We have invited 4 incredible thinkers, doers, and importantly, key field allies, please wave, to paint us a picture. They have traveled here today from the year 2035. That's right. Our speakers have traveled back in time to tell us about the bold and successful future for documentary film and to provide a roadmap or give us the first clues as to how to get there. Now, this is our soapbox. Usually when we do this, we have an actual soapbox, but it's my colleague BD's grandmother's soapbox. It's a health and safety hazard. So Pierre Alexis and the team have kindly built this for us. Each speaker will stand on the soapbox to provide you the clues and the roadmap that we need. After the speakers have spoken, we will turn to you, this brilliant community of documentary film allies, to hear what has resonated with you and to invite you to build on ideas. We only have 60 minutes, less than 60 minutes together now. So sit up, imagine with us, and take part in this generative session. You will soon be handed some cards. Here they are. Sarah, let's start giving them out, please. As you will see in these cards, one side says yes. Whenever you hear something that you agree with and fills you up with joy, please show your support by raising up and waving your yes card. The other side, you'll notice, says and. You can use this to indicate that you'd like to join in, to build on the conversation, and we'll get the mic to you at the right time. My wonderful assistant today is Sarah Moses. Sarah is a former Doc Society team member, once a Doc Society team member, always a Doc Society team member. But Sarah is now the founder and CEO of Together Films, a marketing and sales company serving the international film community. So, on to our speakers. Let me introduce them, this brilliant crew, this brilliant global crew of documentary workers. Inti Cordera, please wave. He can't wave because he's taking photos. Inti is a documentary film director, producer, founder, and executive director of the Mexico City-based international documentary film festival, DocsMX. Inti is also a member of the Disco Alliance, a community of global organizations focused on advocating for documentary film. Doc Society is also a proud member. Shamira, please wave. Here she is. Shamira Raphaëla is based in the Netherlands. She is an award-winning director and chairperson of the New Dawn Film Fund, focused on a vibrant and open and inclusive film industry with a true diversity of perspectives. Susan Mbogo, wave, woo! Susan is based in Kenya. She is the Programs and Partnerships Manager at the East African Documentary Film Fund, Docubox. Docubox has supported over 100 films through grants and capacity building initiatives in the East African region. And last but not least, Mandisa Zitha. Mandisa is the incredible festival director of the Encounters South African International Documentary Film Festival and a keen ambassador for the South African film industry. All right, let's get this going. Friends, close your eyes. Close your eyes. Deep breath in. Breathe out. Open your eyes. Please welcome our time travelers freshly back from 2035. Inti, you're up.
Bonjour all. Well, yes, indeed, I'm a time traveler. I came from both past and the future. From the past, I just arrived from Paris in 1889, when the Eiffel Tower was inaugurated, celebrating this big universal exhibition promising future and modernity for humanity. The history of the 20th century began to be written. Throughout that century, wars and genocides demonstrated the opposite. Climate change and migration have been among many the signs of these times, which at the same time brought us closer to one of the most important events in our history, the revolution of communications and technology, anticipating what the 21st century would bring us, new and transcendental challenges. The impact of the rest of the world and its resources has respected no limits, and now we have to pay this planetary bill. All of this during the 20th century was widely discussed in numerous forums and meetings, and collective actions began to take an important and committed direction and a call for social changes, understanding culture as the path. After the year of 2024 and its 82 elections in 3/4 of the planet, we discovered how fragile our democracies were and how easy it was for few to influence many. After the death of Pepe Mujica, your vice president from 2010 to 2025 and one of the most influential leaders in the history of Latin America, his political testament became a great call for the leaders of the region to take action and responsibilities for the future. Understanding the strength of joint work between governments and society. 2025 was the year that world began to change. Latin America as a region was an important example, and the role of filmmakers, communicators, and journalists become extremely important. 10 years later, yes, today, 2035, we have managed to recover the value of committed and transparent journalism, building and financing independent agencies. It also strengthened new independent and collaborative social networks, which emerged after the democratic collapse of 2024, opening the eyes of millions of young people who realized the manipulation to which they had been subject 10 years ago by social networks controlled by algorithms linked to political interests. So, along these last 10 years, the Global South, united and empowered, strongly recognizing its traditions and ancestral knowledges, its native peoples, who accompanied the steps for a true social change, democratic commitment, equity, and respect. And independent documentary films took a fundamental role for this change. The audiovisual authorities of Iberoamerica strengthened a regional network of filmmakers for change, creating a program financed by governments, but also by a committed group of foundations and philanthropists who understood culture as the path which built paths. This regional network built a program for the first 10 years of work based in 3 axes of action: training, production, and distribution, and a solid commitment for its financing with an annual fund for $300 billion. 50 million intended to support and finance training programs and projects development. 150 million to assure the development and production of independent documentaries through the Narratives for Change Fund. And $100 million more for independent distribution network, which ensures financing for festivals, programming in independent theaters, and the free VOD platform throughout the region. But one last piece of good news. From 2025, the audiovisual authorities of Iberoamerica signed a regional and joint commitment with the main private platforms to guarantee 20% of their programming with independent productions and allocate 25% of their profits to finance the fund. And this was not done by AI, by the artificial intelligence, but by the committed work of the community who achieved it, the urgency of the challenges to be addressed, and the collective consciousness that if a documentary can change the world, it can help us to think how to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Inti. So much goodness, so much goodness. Okay, Shamira, you are up. Woo!
Thank you very much. I put on my heels for you and I'm now taking them off again, because who needs heels anyways? I don't dare to stand on this thing like that. So, it's 2035. As I stand before you today, our office, once a bustling hub of creativity and innovation, is empty. The faded outlines of our new lawn logo on the wall are barely visible. It's a poignant reminder of what once was, a symbol of hope and change. Today, even my login of my email system is not working anymore, signaling the end of an era. New Dawn, a name that once resonated with the promise of equity and inclusion in our film industry, has become nothing more than a distant memory. Our organization has become redundant. It has been dissolved. Our fund is non-existent. Funders and decision makers no longer need to be taught the importance of inclusion. It's a non-discussion. It's an intrinsic part of their reality nowadays. In film schools, we are occasionally mentioned, a footnote in the history of our industry. students listen intently, their eyes wide open by surprise of the fact that the film landscape was once so unequal that an entity as New Dawn was necessary. It's almost unimaginable for them, as they are living in a world where all perspectives are represented and diversity and inclusion are not a goal to be fought for, but a reality. The playing field is leveled, and diversity no longer equals marginalization. The audience have been cured of their cravings for stories about victimhood and poverty porn, as we have fed them multi-layered stories, thereby enhancing their taste buds and changing their taste. These students, the filmmakers of the future, are released of this burden of the limits of the stories that they can tell. They no longer need to tell the stories only coming from their own communities, but they are free to tell any story. They no longer bear the responsibility of filling in the gaps. As we reflect on our journey of New Dawn, the empty office is a testament to the progress that we have made. Our mission was always to strive for a world where every voice was heard and every story is told. Today, in 2035, that mission has been fulfilled, not through our continued existence, but through the fact that it's now embedded into the whole DNA of our film industry. New Dawn might be a distant memory, but its spirit lives on in every film that's been created up until now and that will be created in the rest of the future. Thank you.
Woo! Thank you. Thank you, Shamira. So much goodness there. True inclusivity. Funds thinking about how to make themselves obsolete. Interesting provocation. Okay, Susan, it's you. Go.
Let's try this again. Imagine this, it's 2035, and independent documentary filmmaking is thriving. I am sure we're all wondering how we got there, seeing as a few years ago, things were dire. As we all agree, there are limited spaces to distribute independent documentaries. The narratives are not our own, but those dictated by streamers who only want true crime, sports, reality, etc., leaving the independent documentary filmmakers working on other stories with nowhere to go. Funding, it's shrinking drastically for cultural organizations, for filmmakers, for festivals. How many times did we gather to lament that funding was not there and it was not enough? A few years ago, things were not rosy, but I'm here with some good news. We turned things around. We got together, we came up with solutions. We figured out alternative methods of distribution. One of the ways that we did this was through building audiences in communities and schools. We supported the small independent cinemas that were programming independent films that were mushrooming in the different towns and cities. We understood there was a need to shift how our films were being consumed, and so we leveraged on digital distribution models that not only allowed our films to be screened to our market in the global, for our films to be accessible to our market and the global audience, but that also allowed filmmakers to monetize their art. Isn't that our dream? To make money from doing things that we love, enjoy, and fulfill us? With data becoming more and more affordable, our audiences, who we built through the community and school screenings, were able to engage with our content. The filmmakers being able to make money from their films, with filmmakers being able to make money from their films, we saw more and more diverse documentaries being produced. We were able to tell our own stories, the stories that we wanted to tell. We got to experience Africa from a different lens, stories about love, about joy, about aging, about Afrofuturism. We're all in the spaces. We got to reimagine Africa. And the great news is the community of independent filmmakers was thriving, and we're enjoying and reaping our solutions.
Woo! Thank you. So much goodness. Wave those cards, people. You know that Outcast song, Hey Ya? Shake it like a Polaroid picture. Do that. Okay, Mandisa, go, 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 go.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Journey with me, please, friends, for a moment. It's 2035. I'm standing on the edge of the Cape Town coastline, looking into the horizon of the setting sun, with a view of an island that symbolizes the triumph of the human spirit over adversity, suffering, and injustice. It is a mere 12 kilometers from the coast, similar to the island here, but this one was home to a maximum security prison where political prisoners were incarcerated during apartheid, including our former late president, Mr. Nelson Mandela, the late Nelson Mandela, the first black president of South Africa, elected in 1994, having spent 18 years on Robben Island. It's been 40 years since South Africa gained freedom, and the world is congregating at the tip of Africa, overlooking the island, to celebrate one of the most important documentary film festivals in the world. African films are taking center stage, with a young generation of maverick filmmakers telling stories on their own terms. They are highlighting authentic narratives that enthrall the world with universal themes, that exhibit our shared experiences, values, and challenges. In a bold move to celebrate 30 years of democracy in the year 2024, South Africa leads the early adoption of the African Union's agenda, the African passport and free movement of people. The pursuit of the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the African Renaissance involves removing restrictions on 30 African countries' ability to travel, work, and live within the continent.
Woo!
Although the decision is faced with fierce resistance from some quarters, the move accelerates intra-Africa trade, commerce, and tourism. By 2035, young Africans under the age of 30 constitute 80% of sub-Saharan Africa and an astonishing 45% of the global youth. The lifting of physical and invisible barriers has sparked a movement of youth across the continent, looking for a break from the myriad of challenges. The move slows down the brain drain to Europe, and Africa's youth are the vessels of the continent's true potential. But this is only the beginning. They see themselves as people united under the principles of Pan-Africanism and with a shared cultural experience that contributes to the rich tapestry of the African youth culture. This is reverberating through all cultural forms, but most importantly, storytelling and oral traditions. Rooted in African cultural values, history, language, slang, are distinguishing our visual stories in unique ways. They are hustlers, innovators, hipsters, global nomads, and cultural pioneers, and they consume media content in any way they can get it, if it mirrors their realities. They consume film on mobile handsets, streaming services, and television. They reject stories that maintain stereotypes in favor of authenticity and wider narratives and style. Renewed shared pride and common identity produces the hunger for the consumption of African cultural products rich in cultural heritage and modern influences. Sponsored by the boosted inter-Africa trade, now valued between 15 and 25%, creative startups are beginning to benefit from support mechanisms by African banks, accelerator programs, investments, and collaborative donor programs. High rates of unemployment have reinforced the spirit of cultural entrepreneurship, and creatives are not left behind. Most of Africa's startups are spearheaded by the youth, dead set on finding solutions to some of the continuing and pressing challenges facing the continent. Startups are building their own micro-streaming platforms. A consortium of 3 African banks has initiated a fund for the creative industry to attract investment into the sector. The fund, now valued at $2 billion, is set to support African filmmakers and fund the industry. There are talks that the fund will procure a leading cinema chain. Although the cinema culture is still sluggish, with the middle class opting for preferring on-demand content from home, film lovers across the continent continue to consume film at community halls or in the cramped and confined spaces of townships, shacks, old and alternative cinema spaces, and the cinema houses of the yesteryears. Wherever you go, South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Zanzibar, cinema culture thrives and stubbornly refuses to slacken, despite the challenges of internet access, power shortages, and lack of exhibition spaces. I stand before you not just as a South African at the precipice of a young democracy, but as an African here to celebrate the robust, diverse, and globally connected African cultural ecosystem, a vision championed by encounters and like-minded documentary organizations. It has begun, my friends.
Woo! Woo! Thank you. Yes, wave those cards. Thank you, everyone. Oh my God. Young people inspired by, being enriched by, talking about, creating, making, talking, living, breathing documentary film. And what a dream, what a nearby future we have. What a huge, encouraging conversation that you've all brought to all of us. So thank you so much, everyone. It's over to you. I want to hear your builds. This is not a Q&A. This is about what have you heard? What have you found inspirational? What would you like to think about for your own organization and perspective? We have a couple of mics. So who's up? I will pick on you if you don't, just to be clear.
Is this one on? Yeah, we will come and like harangue you and make someone talk. Anybody put their hand up?
Danny.
Yes, Danny. Go. Here's a mic.
My big take home is no self-censorship. We can't do it. We can't build it. It's going wrong. Everything is, intensely difficult with commerciality, all of that kind of stuff. So I say to you, thank you, and that we need to open our minds and push, 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 so 2035 can be realised in such a positive way.
Woo! Thank you, Danny. Anyone else? We heard so much there about communities coming together for alternative distribution models, cinema culture being vibrant space, taking place in community. We talked about young people being inspired by documentary. We spoke about funds thinking about their future and whether obsolescence. We have someone over here. Amazing.
Here we go.
I'm afraid my question is a little contentious. This is 2024, and about a generation ago, we had something called Can Noir, or Black Can. And this has disappeared. And I'm wondering whether or not the new day or the new age of diversity and inclusion has delivered what Black Can or Can Noir had been or had delivered. So I'm wondering if we've made progress and no longer need a black section in Can, or whether or not we're just pretending that we're now all equal. Diversity and inclusion has triumphed, is doing the job. And can we cite any research, Cressina research, that justify the dissolution or disbanding of Black Can?
Thank you. Would anybody like to pick up on that or respond? I think one of the things that's really important is that we're thinking about a future that feels inclusive. We're thinking about a future where marginalization is something that is not a fix that we need all the time, that is spoken through the narratives that we're seeing on our screens. And I think the speakers we've had today have spoken from their own global perspectives about their incredibly rich, documentary-rich communities that they represent. So I think there's a number of forces, a number of elements that are happening globally. You might not always be aware of them in the global north, but there are global majority countries and organizations such as DocsMX, such as Doc Society, Docubox, part of the Disco Alliance, who are working together to create spaces that feel inclusive, prioritize global majority voices, so that it is, the lead voice in the documentary community. And the ideas that come from those spaces can be traveled globally too. So that's what I want to say on that. Anybody else is welcome to add or build or respond to it. But any other builds for now?
Yes, coming to you.
Thank you very much. Shanida, you said something that really resonated with me at the beginning. You said the integrity of independently produced documentary film is mission critical to us all. I think we all agree, but I think we also need to think about and discuss how we define integrity. I think that is a differentiating factor that will have more and more relevance and should be really stand out by 2035, if not before. So that is something I would love us to explore further together.
I wonder if you'd like to deepen that for us, because when I said that, I'm thinking about, films being not packaged up in sort of celebrity narratives or narratives that don't speak to the work that filmmakers want to make, but also films that can speak to the richness of the world that we live in, who we are, and learning about each other. Yeah. But also films that have journalistic integrity. So there's a number of different aspects to the framing of integrity. Where do you take it?
So I've just started thinking about it, and I think it's incredibly complicated. I think for journalists also, ethical journalism isn't something that's consistently defined. There are different initiatives, but it hasn't come together yet, and they're aware that there needs to be more reflection on that. In documentary filmmaking, we had the film Subject recently by Camilla Hall, so she's thinking about our relationship with the people in the film. The presentation earlier was also talking about the ethics of filmmaking and keeping spontaneity as part of that, so there's a real element of respectful listening. And I think the big difference between documentary films and journalism is it's fine to be subjective. We can have a narrative and tell a story. And again, there we need to, I think, get a lot better at listening respectfully to each other, sharing perspectives and learning from the stories we can tell. But we need to think about how we tell them, not just the ethics of production, but the ethics of storytelling, so that we distinguish ourselves from commoditized content creation. And I think this is where, I read some article somewhere, and I can't remember who wrote it, where it's like, okay, we're in a hurry, we've got a budget, the production's going, we want the fox to catch its prey. At what stage do we just break the rabbit's paw because it'll happen faster? For me, that wouldn't be ethical filmmaking. It's an extreme example, and I am thinking out loud now, so you've sort of challenged me. But I think there's a lot more we can do, and if you're inviting people to take part and do this in a structured way, I'd love to take part. I think it's super important.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your contribution. And yes, absolutely to all of that. If we don't define and hold on to our true expertise in this world, in this work even, and make sure it is known and is respected, then we're sort of on a hiding to nothing, and we're going to lose the respect of the wider communities. I'd love to hear some more builds. Sarah and I are anxious to hand over the microphone. Coming over.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for this opportunity, because it's important to have a chance to talk about our thoughts and generally what is happening around the world. And especially when we talk about independent filmmakers, nowadays it's a lot of issue, unfortunately, around the world. And I'm from Georgia. And I don't know if you heard about it, but a lot of things are happening now. but I will talk more about about my profession, which is really connected me. But there are a lot of things going on. So I wrote a little bit that 450 filmmakers and industry people are banding together to protest about governmental interface and censorship and intermediate. So, we have turned the back of the state, the National Film Center, and putting their trust in instead of independent organizations. And DOCA, which is Documentary Association of Georgia, and Georgian Film Institute launched up and are making several supports. But they are very new organizations and need a lot of support from around the world, because otherwise it will be not possible to continue independent filmmaking from Georgia, and not only Georgia, because Georgia is one of the representatives of Caucasus, which is a very important region, which is connected to Asia and Europe. So I think it needs attention more than it is now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So important. The cuts that public service broadcasters and other institutions are facing, the pressure to abandon independent documentary work, to abandon those audiences, is happening everywhere. It is, as I spoke at the beginning, part of the democratic crisis that we're facing at the moment. And it speaks to something you raised, which is the need for more collaboration, more allyship, more shared voices, wherever we can. So thank you for raising. Any other contributions? Sarah, go get them.
Who's next? I'm going to call on someone. Oh, was that a hand? Was that? No, it wasn't a hand. Oh, okay. Yes, of course you do. You're coming in.
I want to pick up on two of your. Sorry, my voice is a little bit gone, and it is normally very sore. What you were saying about the integrity and so on, I think it's very important, but I think we should not, as the international film community, try to dictate what is integrity. The beauty of creative documentary, to me, is that all the filmmakers in the room have their own vision and their own thoughts of what is going on in society. That's totally subjective. There's no objectivity anyway, in my opinion. But a news item or something, there's like a journalistic rules we follow. But I think we should not, personally, try to give each other too much rules. What is integrity? What is all of that? Because then the creativity dies. And I have the feeling that at the moment that is happening quite a lot, and then we entangle each other, and it doesn't help the creativity of filmmakers, and they are our real observers of what is going on in society, all by their own means, their own intelligence, and their own way of making a film. That's why I love documentaries so much, for that reason. And I think we should allow each other that freedom. And then all my dearest friends over there, we know each other for a long time. I think we should all embrace what you've been saying, but all together really, really think about censorship, which is going on in Georgia, but it's going on in Poland, it's going on in Hungary, all our community filmmakers over there. If they make any political film, I mean, I know a really good filmmaker, Polish filmmaker, he made a very critical film, he's out of the film fund. He can only now finance his film outside of Poland to make a critical film on what's going on there. So I think we should really, really, really show solidarity for creative documentary and for people who make political, really strong films. Anyway, now somebody else go. Oh, you want to? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, let's have a duet.
Thank you. So I don't think integrity and independence or freedom and subjective messages are mutually exclusive. I think that's my key point. So it's not about tying people up, it's about giving them the freedom, but in a structured way. And I think we need a discussion, more discussion, not necessarily definitions and rules, but a lot more awareness of what integrity could mean for us.
Love that. Okay. Who's next? Let's go around to this side of the room. We've been quite quiet. Who's got any comments over here? I'm going to come to you because you're right there. Have you got anything in your mind? Yes, you have. There you go.
I always have things on my mind. I think the notion of control over our distribution and in the future and sustainability of our community is really something, is a bit of a takeaway for me. And yes, we are multiple communities, we work in different contexts, but I think the future is really about us defining it. And I think there are many opportunities worldwide for us to support each other and make sure that our work is getting seen by audiences and multiple audiences, and not just on streamers, but in communities, as somebody brought up, and being part of this revitalization of the independent distribution model. So that is my big takeaway, and I hope that's our future.
Woo! Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there, and the expanding on that of like defining what we mean by success. So we always focus on like, oh, you got into cinemas and that's, you won. And it's like, but most films don't make any money in cinemas, so why is that the winning card? It seems really defunct in our thought leadership. So more community spaces, more localized distribution, more educational distribution where people are actually watching it. Fun fact, at the moment, the average US documentary makes $50,000 in the box office. Once you remove the cinema share and the PN expenses, you've probably made $0 of actual profit. In the UK, it's about $42,000 at the moment. So this glorification of like theatrical being the win is actually not the win monetarily and also viewership-wise, which you could see. There was examples, not in this, but last panel, of incredible screening tools, educational distribution. So revitalizing what we term success, I think, is vital to have a better future. That's my contribution.
Thank you. Thank you. We have, would you mind going to Leah?
Yes, we do. Who had their hand up then? Oh, over here. There we go. To you and then you.
Whew. You have to forgive me. I've got a bit of jet lag after traveling back and forth in time. I mean, it's just, I think you guys all understand. It's kind of crazy. So if my brain's a little bit, muddled, then I apologize. But, when I was in the past and even in the 2024 where we are now, there's a lot that is hard to reconcile. And I'm not sure that in life, even, that all things can be reconciled. And that's what's interesting also about this space, is that it's constantly diving into renegotiations, I think, of difficult realities and dynamics, and often in numerous forms. But I guess I'm coming back from the future. It definitely looks different. There's a lot that is really positive, and what I want to know more about is how we get these really cool funders and like banks and investors who are really going to put up the billions of dollars that we need. I'm still wondering about how in the 10 years we achieve that, but I think it's like a good thing to think about how to cultivate a mentality that feels also not, let's say, problematic or sort of like tied to things that are reprehensible or truly at odds with the other intentions and ideals that we're working towards. So how do we make banks, funders, investors, whatever it may be, cool, and also kind of invite them into these ideas in a way that doesn't feel forbidding, but accepting of the sort of improvisation and attempt towards difference, rather than some sort of false comfort in what we've known. Pardon the jet lag. Sorry, guys.
Thanks for time traveling with us too. We have a comment just here, but I will just behind you, Sarah. But I would just say that we need to be ambitious, right? We need to be ambitious. We need as many collaborators as possible. That might include really working with and encouraging philanthropic partners to deepen their support for documentary film. I think it's relevant as we're thinking about the growing democratic crisis, as well as public service institutions and broadcasters are pressured. So we need to be ambitious about what we want. We need to go and ask for it, and we need to say it and demand it. Governments are frankly, for the most part, I come from the UK, so I can say this, are failing in their responsibility to support culture. So the more ambitious we can be, the more collaborators we can find, the louder we can be, I think is to our service. Sarah.
Asking all the people for the money. And we'll be announcing a very small bit of money at Sheffield, TBC. So do listen up for our announcements, and Chef, we'll have some news for new money. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Hello. I made a documentary about Venezuela, about the history of Chavismo in Venezuela. It's called Combate. And it's the history of Chavismo as told by mostly the opposition leaders and the victims of incarceration, torture, assassination, etc., etc. And the problem I have, and even yesterday I went to talk to a festival, head of a festival, who said, I won't even look at the teaser. I have a 3-minute teaser because it's too controversial and it's going to create problems in my... The movie is not at all an apology of, it's not a right-wing assessment or view of the problem. It's the problem is described as with facts. It's not just opinions. Yes, we do have analysts and historians that talk about how Chavismo developed and all that. But the problem is that many people who feel that if you criticize Chavismo, you're criticizing socialism, therefore there is no market or interest in this kind of project. And I think it's unfair. I think it's better to be able to see the film without prejudice and see what the story is told, because 8 million people have fled Venezuela because of violence, because of hunger, because of total mismanagement and corruption. But a lot of people don't want to accept that. They don't want to see it. And it's like you cannot criticize Cuba, you cannot criticize Russia, you cannot... I mean, in Venezuela, we have all these totalitarian regimes, Iran, Russia, Cuba, etc. They are all there. That's part, their influence has made that disaster. Venezuela is a very rich country, and now it's an extremely poor country from which 8 million people have fled. So if we get the reaction, no, you cannot even watch it, it's unfair and it's difficult.
We have thankfully wonderful festival colleagues in the room, and I think, you know, festivals are under pressure as well, whether it be funding, whether it be political pressure, depending on their geography. I wondered, Mandisa, if you wanted to just speak to that a little bit.
Thank you for your comment. I think one of the issues that we are finding as a festival is when you talk about independence and censorship, filmmakers from the global south are limited in their independence to make the films that they really want. There's a lot of decision making that dictates what kind of films we should be making. And that's how you get the resources and the co-productions and the grants that you need. And as a festival, we have recognized that there's a need to level that playing field. And that is why I talk a lot about building our own local ecosystems, because we have to give ourselves the self-independence to make the stories that we want. They might not be stories about the big social issues, but there will be stories that are authentic to us. And that is why I think your comment about how do we grow investment, how do we envision that future, has to be localized and regional and forward-thinking. For example, there is a bank in the region that announced a 1 billion investment fund for the creative sector in Africa. So these are all realistic, but I think that as festivals are struggling, and I think we've all seen the media, festivals are really struggling, and we are really struggling as well as a documentary festival. And we don't have a great sustainability model. I don't know what is the sustainability model of festivals currently. But I think what is important is for us, especially as festivals from the Global South, to level the playing field and give everyone the opportunity to make the kind of films that they want to make. Because in a way, that is kind of also a kind of censorship. So I am sorry that your film was not even looked at. And I think those are the challenges in 2024 that we have to address.
Thank you so much for that comment. It's incredibly important what you've just shared with us today. Guys, we've reached our time together in this wonderful space, in this circle of love. I'd like all of the speakers to stand up.
One last word.
Inti has a word.
One last word. Well, thanks Doc Society for inviting us to this time traveling challenge. Thanks CanDoc for hosting it. And it was a challenge to think from the future, our present, but it's no time as the present. And this is the time, this is now where we are collecting ideas, working together. This time travel inspired me a lot, and listening to all these strong voices, that we are in the right way, in the right path, and I trust we'll get 2035 in a good mood.
Yeah, thank you. It's true. All of these thoughts and ideas and comments and builds, it means we're thinking in the most expansive way possible, right? It's super cool. Please stand up, all of you, our time travelers. We love you. Thank you. Take care.